Today we're talking about the goals on the IEP. So we're going to cover some goals objectives. We're going to talk about alignment of goals to the student needs, development of measurable goals, progress monitoring, how we go about selecting appropriate measuring tools, and a little bit about legislation and litigation. The key here is the standards. The content of the IEP has to contain the same types of access to the challenging standards that all of the students' grade level peers without disabilities receive. IDEA includes specific requirements for measurable annual goals to be included in every student's IEP, and it has to describe what the student is reasonably expected to accomplish over a 12-month period. Now, IDEA's verbatim words tell us that a child's annual goals must be crafted with careful attention to enabling the child to be involved in and make progress in the general curriculum. So, IDEA's language have a close tie between present level statements that we talked about before and the annual goals that we are going to develop. When we begin the process of writing measurable annual goals, the IEP team starts with the academic and functional needs that we identify in the PLAF statement. Then we identify any relevant academic standards for the grade level of the student, and then we discuss as a team what the student should be able to achieve during the next 12 months. Once we do this, the team is ready to design annual goals that will help close the gap between the student's current skill levels and the expected academic or functional performance skills. For the goals to be reasonably calculated, they have to have a solid foundation. The key is connecting the content and data that's in our present level statement to our measurable annual goals. The present level statement has to include a description of how the child's disability affects their involvement and progress in the general curriculum. The PLAF and the goals need to be connected. So the PLAF is the rationale for the goals. It includes a baseline showing where the student performs now so that the goal can be built, and there must be a direct correlation between the annual goal and the PLAF. The student's needs or deficit areas must be aligned to the goals. So if a need is expressed in the PLAF, it has to be directly connected to a goal that you developed. The PLAF shows the starting point, and the goal shows the desired endpoint. For example, let's say that Matias has difficulty interacting with their peers. Their verbal interactions are negative 85% of the time, as measured by teacher-charted data on a 5-point rubric. So the goal is going to be something like, given 10 minutes of free play, Matias will engage in 3 verbal interactions with peers using 4-word positive or neutral sentences in 14 out of 20 occasions over a 4-week period as measured by the teacher-charted data. Another example might be, Matias can maintain attention to complete a task up to 2.5 minutes as measured by teacher-charted data. That would be the need. So the goal would be, given a task or direction, Matias will begin the task within 1 minute and remain on task for at least 5 minutes independently with no more than 2 prompts on 8 out of 10 independent tasks as measured by teacher-charted data. In these examples, you can see that a need is expressed in the PLAF, and that is directly connected to the goal that's developed. In the first one, we indicated some difficulty with verbal interactions, so the goal is targeted to increase positive verbal interactions. The PLAF shows the starting point, and the goal shows the desired endpoint. Some points to consider when developing the goals. First, will the goals enable the student to progress? Second, can the goal be monitored, and is there a clear understanding of what it would mean for the goal to be mastered? Third, will the goal lead to a corresponding special education service? Remember that specially designed instruction relates directly to the goals that a student is working on, and it's partnered with the services needed to accomplish those goals. And fourth, what resources will be needed to accomplish the expected level of performance? We're looking at occupational therapy, small group instruction, use of a computer graphic organizer, etc. Remember, using stock or pre-written goals that are not individualized does not meet the requirements of IDEA. For students with significant cognitive disabilities, those who take alternate assessments, the IEP goals need to be aligned with the state's grade level content standards. However, it's essential that the IEP team also considers the individual needs of the student when developing these annual goals. The connection between the present levels and the goals is not the only connection that needs to be included in the IEP. The goals and objectives are critical in determining the specially designed instruction, or SDI, needed for the student. You should clearly be able to see the SDI needed after you read the present level and the goals. Something to consider. If you're answering a prompting question like, what does the child need to learn or to do academically? This indicates what goals might be appropriate for the student. Another area for the goals is going to be, what does the child need to be able to learn or do functionally? These types of goals don't come under the typical academic curriculum. Examples of functional skills might be learning to eat independently or use public transportation, communication with augmentative communication devices, social emotional needs, and those could be things like impulse control, anger management, or even appropriate behavior alternatives. In the Supreme Court case Andrew F., regarding the standard for free and appropriate public education, the court rejected the more than de minimis standard and said that IDEA demands more, saying for children with disabilities, receiving instruction that aims so low would be tantamount to sitting idly waiting for the time they were old enough to drop out. Andrews says that the IEP should be reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate in the light of the child's circumstances. And every child should have the chance to meet challenging objectives. And the LEA should be able to provide a cogent and responsive explanation for their decisions that shows the IEP is reasonably calculated to enable the child to make progress appropriate in the light of the child's circumstances. This reflects in our goal writing by looking at these 4 critical elements for measurable annual goals: target behavior, condition, criterion for acceptable performance, and time. What skill does the student need to demonstrate? In what context does the student need to demonstrate the skill? What is the criterion for acceptable performance? How will we know the student achieved the goal? And by when can the student be expected to achieve the goal? All goals must have each of these components. To meet the Andrew F. standard, we have to include these criteria. Goals need to be SMART. Specific means they're clearly stated. Measurable means they're quantifiable. Actively phrased means they are clearly observable. Realistic means they are practical but challenging. And time-bound means they have a defined time for when mastery is anticipated. Remember, every IEP must have measurable goals. Next time, we'll talk about progress monitoring. Have a great day.